Hello, everyone. You're welcome to another exciting, enlightening, and informative episode on the Amogate Radio's Communications Program. I remain your host, Adekbeju Jayobo. Thank you so much for joining me today. Thank you so much for listening in. And I am very sure that you're going to learn so much insightful information that would help your organization adjust to the changes that you want to implement in this new year. Yes, changes. So far on this series, we've been considering good practices in change management. And one of the things we've been considering so far is that change is inevitable and change comes for us all, whether in life or in business. Change is constant. You expect, or we expect, changes to occur. Even in life, you see changes. In organisms, as long as there is life, one of the things that is constant is change. Also, in the business landscape of the 21st century is characterized by the rapid change that is brought about due to technological, economic, political, and social changes. And in the business space or in the workplace, it is no longer the case that, managers or employees of firms, look forward to the same change every year. What used to work this year might not work next year. It is that fast. In fact, in the same year, you can have technological advancements or new softwares, new AIs, better ways of doing things that would cause major changes or cause some form of changes in your organization. Not to talk about, the increase of intermigration amongst, countries in the world. You have a lot of people moving from one country to another. So it means that at any point, any employee in your organization can tell you and say, hey, boss, I'm relocating to another country. And then you have to start to look for a new person. You have to recruit a new person and know that your new employee is going to come with their own perspectives, their own philosophies, their own attitudinal change, and that would also impact your organization. And so change constantly occurs. Another thing that we must agree on is that, the pace of change in the 21st century particularly is so rapid and is so vast that organizations that don't quickly adjust and adapt to these changes might quickly become obsolete or find themselves at the back burner very quickly. And like I said, that's because new and better and improved ways and systems of doing things are coming up. Competitors are looking for ways to outdo their competition. They're looking for ways to stand out in their industry. And so every organization is researching better ways to rendering their services or delivering their products. And so it means that organizations must constantly adapt to change. And like I said last week, if you see any organization that resists change, then you're looking at an organization that would soon become irrelevant in the business space. A popular adage says that he who rejects change is the architect of decay. And the only human institution that rejects change or progress is the cemetery. That means that if anyone rejects change, they are getting close to their hand. Because, one of the things that change does is that it puts you ahead. So it is very critical and important that organizations develop the capabilities and systems or structures to adapt and to steer change in their advantage. That is very important. And because of the so much changes that is going on, and because organizations need to manage these changes so that they don't go out of hand and direct this change in their favor, then change management protocol, change management approach must be in place in every organization. And then so far we've been looking at change management, and we said that change management is the complex or systematic approach of handling all the processes, the steps, and the principles that it, comes with change. Is basically that structure that's in place that helps change from conception to communication to implementation to evaluation, checking if your change process or your change project was a success, and then resolution when change has been fully adopted and embedded in your organizational structure and culture. So that is change management. And it requires serious attention, in every organization, and it involves everyone's involvement in your organization. And I mean from your senior management to the lowest cadres of employees. Everyone must be involved in your change project in order to achieve a meaningful or a progressive transformation or success across various levels. That is very important. And one of the things we've seen is that over the years, organizations are focused on expanding their businesses worldwide. You see a lot of organizations wanting to open new branches, of their organizations in different countries. That's because the world has become, as big as the world is, it has become so small. As global as the world is, you will be amazed that the market has also become very local, with technology at our disposal and with information at your fingertips. You can, be in one country and have so many clients in another country. And because of this, organizations want to focus on achieving excellence in processes and operations. They want to implement new innovations in technology, and they want to identify the right talent that is, required for their organization, that will be a best fit in their organization to give them that competitive and winning edge. And all that will cause certain changes, or will cause that the organization goes through change from time to time. And that is why change management is very key and very essential in every organization. Last week, we also looked at the principles of change management. And one of the things I want to establish at this point is that these principles talk about steps to follow in change management. It does not mean that it is a one-size-fits-all for everyone. It just means that if you want to have success in your change management project or your change project, that means implementing change, then it is important that you put these steps or these principles into mind. And we talked about, the following steps. We said the first thing is that you must prepare your organization for change. The second thing is that you must craft a vision and strategic plan for change, meaning that you must have a vision for the change. What is this change coming to achieve in my organization? Or what do we aim to have achieved at the end of this change project? Are we just making changes in the organization because everyone is also making changes? No, there must be a goal at the end of your project, and that would lead to your strategic plan. How do we go about this change project? Who are those that will be involved? Who are the stakeholders? What will be our success metrics to know whether this change project is successful, whether it's being adapted properly, or whether it is not working well for organization. That is very important. That's the second step in your change management system. The third step is that implement the change. And like I said last week, this is the very important stage, because you see the first two are paperwork, preparing and coming up with a vision and strategic plan is all paperwork, and that can be done as senior management. You can say, okay, we're going to do this and this and this and this, but implementing change is where the work is done. This is where the change project goes from just being on paper to being actionable steps and processes that will now begin to impact your organization. And so it's important that once your strategic plan has been drafted and measured out, you involve everyone in your organization. And don't forget that in your strategic plan, everything must be covered. Every aspect, your employees' temperaments, their behaviors, their responses, how would they respond to this change? Everything must be included in your strategic plan, and that would inform or determine the success of the implementation of change. So everyone must be involved. Then the next step we talked about last week is that you must communicate change. Communication can either make or break your change project. Communication can be that steering to your change project. As wonderful as the engine is, once the steering is broken, the car is headed for a ditch. And that is how important communication is. You want to communicate with every stakeholder, in your organization, with everyone who will be impacted by this change project. You want to communicate with them again and again, and you want to communicate with them early on. One of the things you want to make sure you do is that you communicate the vision and the need for change, particularly to your employees, because most often than not, your employees are the primary recipients of the change project, meaning that they are most likely the ones who would have to engage the change project. They are the ones who would have to adjust the most. They are the ones who would have to start to adjust to this new way of doing things. So you must communicate with them again and again. And when we talk about communication, I'm talking about a two-way communication. You speak to them and you hear from them. There must be feedback. You must know whether they want this change, whether they understand the change, whether they like the change or not. And you must see ways that you can make things easy for them so that your change project can be successful. The next step is that you must embed the changes into your company's or your organization's culture and practices. Once you've started implementing change and you've communicated with employees, then that change must be a part of your culture. And like I would always say, the beautiful or the best way a culture can be adopted is when the leader, takes the first step. You must lead by example. If you want something to be changed in your organization, be the primary change agent. Let your management be the primary change drivers. Let your employees say that you're willing to also take on, this change project and adjust also to the change. So a very good example is here if you're, making changes to resumption time, or you're making changes to dress codes in your organization, or making changes to the use of certain softwares in your organization. Be a part of it. Do it. Adjust to it also, adopt it also. Don't just be the all talk and no do kind of leader. So the change must be embedded in your ways of doing things, in your culture, your organizational culture. And then the sixth step or principle that we reviewed regarding change management is that you must review your progress and analyze change results. Very important. You want to consider at the end of the journey, was this change project a success? And how would you know it's a success? If it achieves the goal or the vision that you set out for it. So was it a success? If it was, you want to consider, what did we do well, or what did we do to make it a success? If it was not, you also want to ask yourself, what didn't we do right? What should we have paid attention to? And so you want to review your change project and you want to evaluate, you want to measure your success. And I would say at this point that if your change project becomes successful, make sure you celebrate your success. Make sure your employees feel, appreciated for adjusting to change. Because as wonderful and as great as change can be, it is not easy. So if your employees adjust to change, make sure you celebrate, your wins regarding your change project. Today, we're going to be considering change management models that you can adopt in your organization. And when I talk about change management models, I'm talking about theories or frameworks that have been proposed by different people. And we have so many change management models. I mean, we have so many. But today, because of time, I will be looking at two that are, widely acceptable and have proven to have worked for certain organizations. So I'll be looking at the two widely acceptable models, change management models that we have today. And the first one I'll be looking at is the Lewin's change management model. I'll say that again, the Lewin's change management model. So who is Lewin, or what is this model about? This model was developed by a physicist and a social psychologist, Kurt Lewin, back in the 1940s. And one of the things he brought a scientific approach to the change management approach. Like I said, he's a physicist, so he brought a very scientific approach to, managing or handling change or implementing change in your organization. And he came up with 3 steps, which is known as the unfreeze, the change, and the refreeze stages of change. I'll say that again. He came up with the unfreeze, the change, and the refreeze stages of change. So what does the unfreeze, change, and refreeze means? Kurt Lewin, described change as, using the analogy of different stages of ice. Very interesting, right? Using the different stages of ice. And he was talking about when ice, of course, you have it in its frozen state, and then you have to change it from that frozen state to a liquid state. So that is unfreeze. A very good example is for those of us who like to have ice cubes, those of us who like to use, different shapes and, sizes of ice molds. Sometimes you want to change from a square to probably a rose-shaped ice cube. Now, to do that, you would need to unfreeze that ice cube from solid to liquid, and then that is unfreeze, and then you would have to pour that liquid from the former ice mold into a new one, and that is change. And then you would need to refreeze it, meaning that he now has to go back from its liquid or melted state to being refrozen. And so Kurt Lewin was trying to say that since most employees are already used to a certain way of doing things, one of the things that would happen when change comes is that there will be some form of resistance to change. And so he's saying that for change to occur, employees would need, first of all, to be unfrozen from their usual pattern or behavior. They have to be unfrozen from the system they are used to, which is very normal. And then they would have to be exposed to the change. And after the change has occurred or the change has been implemented, things, the employees have to be refrozen, meaning that now this change has to be embedded solidly in the employees such that this change becomes the new way of doing things. So let's look at, the 3 stages: unfreeze, change, and refreeze. So unfreeze talks about the first stage of transition, and it is the most critical stage in the entire change management process because it involves improving the readiness as well as the willingness. Mark those 2 words, the readiness and the willingness of people to change. People are used to a certain way of doing things. So when you want to unfreeze people, you are practically bringing them out of their comfort zone. You're saying, look, you've been used to a certain way of doing things, but we're not doing that anymore. And then you're going to meet some certain form of resistance. People are going to be uncomfortable. Trust me, this change will not be easy on some persons. It might be easy for some, especially those who are very flexible and, who are very open to learning new things, who are very high on creativity and innovation. They're more likely to, take on a change project. However, for employees who prefer stable, predictable cultures and systems, then your change project is going to hit them in the knee. Is going to become uncomfortable. And so you want to create a system that prepares people for change, and it involves, getting their readiness and willingness. It involves, getting their buy-in for the change. It involves, getting them to accept this new way of doing things, or this better way of doing things. It involves that your employees must accept this new way of doing things. And so because of that, one of the key things in this stage is communication. Effective communication plays a very vital role at this stage. You must communicate the need for change. You must let your employees know why change is coming to your organization, the impact of that change, the benefits of the change to the organization, and probably to them as employees. So effective communication must consistently be ongoing at the unfreeze level. One of the things that, I also, you said about communication is that there must be feedback. So your employees, you must hear from them. Are they comfortable? Do they have reservations regarding this change? What are their fears, their anxiety, their worries about this change? Do you need to, put certain support measures in place to help them adjust to this change? You must hear from them also. That is very, very important. And so that is the first stage of change, then of the change management, that is on freeze. Then the second stage is the change stage. It's also called the transition stage, and this is the stage of actual implementation. So once you've done your freezing successfully, meaning that you've been able to communicate the vision of change to your employees, you've been able to get their readiness and willingness, and you've been able to secure their buy-in or their agreement to take on a change project, the next thing is the transition or the change stage, which is the implementation stage. And this is where people begin to try their hands on the new ways of doing things. This is where people begin to adjust to the new way of doing things. This is where people probably start to resume at a different time, if that is the change that is coming into your organization. Or this is probably where certain employees start to adjust to their new roles, if they were probably transferred to a new department, or they were moved to a different role, given different responsibilities. This is the stage of implementation. This is where people start to act in a different way and move in a new direction. That is the change stage. And during this stage, careful planning, effective communication, and encouragement must continually go on. It is believed that this stage of transition is not easy due to uncertainties and the fact that people are afraid. For somebody who was probably transferred to a new department, they've probably been used to the systems and the processes in their former department. Now they're in a new department. They're probably afraid, okay, hope I'll be able to do my work well. Hope I won't, mess up this new job. Hope I won't, how do I adjust to this new place? So there'll be a lot of uncertainties. So it is important to know that this transition stage will not happen overnight. It will take some time for your employees to ease into it, and that is why constant communication, support, and encouragement must go on in the change stage of your change management. Then the third stage talks about the refreeze stage. So now that you have melted your liquid, you've poured it into a different mold, the molds that you desire, it is time to put that mold back into the freezer or into your refrigerator and refreeze that liquid. And so at this stage, the refreeze stage, once people have started, so one of the things that you're going to be doing in the refreeze stage is that this new change, now that it's been accepted by your employees and it's been implemented, you want to embed it into your organizational culture. You want to embed it into your way of doing things, meaning that your, organizational processes, job descriptions, standards of doing things, probably policies reflect this change. And it means that it is incorporated, or this change is incorporated into the everyday way of doing things in your business or in your organization. One of the importance of the refresh stage is that he gives employees, that sense of stability, and he allows them feel confident and comfortable with their, the new ways of working. So one of the things you want to do is that if you're saying, okay, we're moving resumption time, giving an example from probably 8 a.m. to 9 a.m. or from probably 10 a.m. to 8 a.m., you want to incorporate that into your structures. You want to put things in place to help your employees. And, talked about effective communication and support in the change or transition level. And once employees have adjusted to that change, you want to make sure that it becomes a part of your structure, it becomes a part of your culture, it becomes a normal way of doing things, such that employees can ease into the change. And then, the rationale for creating this sense of stability is because our world is an ever-changing world. And so you don't want to leave your employees at that constant level of change where they are wondering if this is their final bus stop or if the journey still continues. Remember that in every change project, you have conception, you have preparation and planning, you have implementation, and then you have review. After review, you must have resolution. Your employees must, after they've onboarded the change vehicle, they must disembark. You must give them a space to rest, to celebrate their wins, and to adjust to this new way of doing things. So that is very critical about the refreezing stage. You must make sure that your employees now settle into this new way of doing things, and then they can, adjust properly before you bring up another change. It is very important. The next model of change or change management I'll be considering today very quickly is the Kotter's 8-step model of change. John Kotter is a Harvard Business School professor and a renowned change expert. And in his popular book, Leading Change, he introduced the 8-step model of change, which includes the first step he talked about in his, model is creating an urgency. So he says that if you're going to be bringing change to your organization, or if you want to embark on a change project in your organization, the first thing is that you must create an urgency, meaning that you must let your employees know that now is the time for change, not tomorrow, not next week, not next year. Now is the time for change. So if you're changing probably the way you do things, or probably your customer, relationship, or your customers, the way you attend to your client, or you're changing, your processes, you must create a sense of urgency around the change. Your employees must understand the reason for the change, and you must emphasize the need for change, why it is very important and very essential that your organization embarks on the change. You must talk about the importance of the change to your organization. You must communicate the vision also. You must communicate a very compelling vision, to them. I'll get there, but you must create a sense of urgency around the change. Then the next step that Kotter, proposed is that you must form powerful guiding coalitions. This is where you begin to identify stakeholders and change drivers, and you begin to form partnerships or coalitions with them. You begin to identify those who are very important to your change project, those who are likely to adjust or adopt your change project, and those who can act as role models for others on the change project. The third step we talked about is developing a vision and a strategy. We already talked about it in steps and principles. And so Kotter is saying you must develop a vision and a strategy. Vision talking about what is the goal, where are we heading for? Even in life, you don't just, except if you just probably want to cruise and rest, you don't just enter your car with your family and say, oh, we're going somewhere. And then they're like, where? And you're like, somewhere. No, there's usually a destination in mind. And that is what your vision does for you. It creates an end goal. It creates a foreseeable outcome and future. Where do we want to be when we implement this change? And then you must have a strategy. How do we get there? How do we implement this change? How do we move from where we are to where we want to be? You must develop a strategy. And then, very important, the fourth step on the Kotter's model is you must communicate the vision. I cannot emphasize, or I cannot overflog this matter of communication. You must communicate the vision. Everyone must be aware of why change, or what the change is even about. It must not meet them unawares, else you might meet certain resistance to the change. Then the fifth step in this model talks about removing obstacles. Now that you've developed a vision and you've communicated the change, you must now sit down to consider the obstacles that can face your change. And you must consider all the factors, both internal and external factors, that might pose some form of challenge or obstacle to your change process. You must consider all the loopholes. You must even make allowances for the unknowns, things that can show up that you probably did not envisage. You must make room for it in your strategic plan. So you must remove obstacles. Then you must create short-term wins. Yes, you must create short-term wins. You must have junctions where you stop to evaluate if your change project is successful and to celebrate your achievements. So you must create short-term, and that gives your employees space to breathe, space to relax. It allows a structure where employees can take their time to ease into the change. So it's like celebrating one step at a time. So just like you have a small child, how you celebrate developmental processes gradually. When a child starts to crawl, you're excited and you celebrate it. That's how it is. And then when they start to take their first steps, you celebrate it. When they start to run, you celebrate it. In the same vein, you must create short-term wins when you're implementing your change project. Then you must consolidate your gains. Now that you've, when your change project is successful, you must look at what made us successful and you must consolidate it. You must look at the ways or the processes that made that change project successful, and then it must be something that must be embedded in your culture. And then the last step, the eighth step in Kotter's model, is anchoring change in the corporate culture. Of course, it must now be your new modus operandi. It must be your new way of doing things. The change must reflect in everything you do in your organization. And so those are the two models I'll be considering today: Lewin's change model and Kotter's 8-step change model. So what is the best approach to take? What is the best model to adopt? While it is good to adopt any particular change management model, it is also important to note that there is no one-size-fits-all approach to change management. And that is because change, the type of change and the impact it brings varies from organization to organization. And so the fact that a particular system worked for an organization does not mean it might work for your organization. Not necessarily. Or the fact that a particular change seems to favor one organization does not mean it will necessarily favor your own organization. And don't forget, maybe I should say this at this point, that change comes with two sides. Change is like a coin and it has both sides, or it has two sides. What is beneficial to one team, organization, might, mark my word, might be unfavorable to another team or to another group, particularly those who have benefited from the status quo. So if there are certain teams or employees in your organization, let me give a very good example. If the change your organization is embarking on is relocation, moving from one location to a better location, maybe for visibility's sake. So you're moving to a central business district where you'll be seen, and then you have access to more clients and customers, and that is great for the organization. The organization would make more profits that way, and you will step up and upskill in the industry. It might not be the same. That change is sweet and is good, but some employees probably live closer to the former location, and probably it takes them 5 to 10 minutes to get to work. And now you're changing to a new location. For those employees who enjoyed that former location, and then in 5 minutes they get to work, now you're moving your organization or your business to a different location. That change will not be favorable to those who stay close or used to stay close to the former location. That's what I mean. So change comes with two sides of a coin. So what are the practical steps that you can adopt in your organization to make change easy and to make change a success? Like I said, it does not mean you have to adopt all, but these are steps that you can put in place to ensure that your change project is successful. So the first step I want to talk about is do a thorough analysis of the current state of your organization. Very important. It is important to determine, first of all, the needs of your organization, to determine the changes that your organization needs. You also need to assess the strengths and the capacities of your employees. My employees, or are the employees in my organization capable? Do they have what it takes to take on or to implement this change? You must analyze that. Else, if you bring a change that your employees are not ready and prepared for, or they are not trained for, it will weigh them down. It will overwhelm them, and your employees will feel outweighed by your change. So you must do a proper and thorough analysis of the current state of your organization. The second thing we've talked about again is that you must develop a clear and concise vision. It must be clear. This is where we're going. We're headed for South Carolina. It must be clear. Why do we need to go to South Carolina? Because of this. Clear and concise. It must be something you can communicate in 3-4 sentences, and in a very clear manner that everyone in your organization, and I mean everyone from senior management to the lowest cadre, must be able to understand. So you must understand why change has to take place, the impact of the change, and the possible outcomes that change will create for your organization. So you must create a vision for change in your organization. Then you must communicate that vision. You must create a compelling message about why the change has to occur, and you must use your vision as a supporting evidence to emphasize the why or the need for change. And like I've been reiterating all through this episode, is that you must communicate with your employees, the benefits of the change. Explain to them how the changes will affect them. Prepare them for what is coming, but talk about the benefits, how he gets to benefit your organization and how they also get to benefit from it. Then the next step I want to talk about is that identify, engage, and manage your stakeholders. And stakeholders here refer to persons or groups, either internal or external, that are interested and are affected by the process and the success of your change project. So it is very important that your stakeholders are carried along. So ensure that your employees, senior management, investors, and customers are carried along and well informed about this new change. Also engage key persons who are instrumental to the success of your change project. Another thing is that you must remain open to employee concerns and address them in terms of the need to change. That means that you must answer their questions openly and honestly. You must let them know, things as they are. Don't code things, don't hide things, don't say things under ambiguous, context, or hide them under ambiguous words. Let them know the impact of the change on them. If you're relocating, the example I've been using, let them know, okay, we're moving from here to here. We've gotten a new business space and this is where we'll be staying. And I know that, okay, this is going to cost changes in your transportation plan and, your transportation, your movement from the house to the office. Communicate with them openly and honestly, and deal with the problems that arises or that they bring to your table immediately. You must remain open to your employees regarding change. You can also engage, support, and empower your employees by involving them in the change project or the change process where appropriate and where necessary. Also have your managers provide day-to-day support, encouragement, direction, understanding that adjusting to change is a gradual process. Then, as we've been saying, embed change in your organizational culture. Make sure that your culture reflects the new change, starting with your leaders. You must take the front role. You must be the change agent first before every other person comes aboard the change project. And where possible, generate short-term wins to celebrate and reinforce the change, as this will motivate your employees. And then establish feedback and review systems. At every phase of the change implementation project, ensure to get feedback from people, whether within or outside your organization, and evaluate the results you're getting based on your metrics. Remember, we said that in your strategic plan, you must have key performance indicators to know whether your change project is a success or not. So you must continually measure, such that if change is moving your organization away from the predetermined vision or goal, it might be time to redirect that change, or it might be time to reconsider that change entirely. Wow, we have said so much today. One of the things I want you to go home with is that change can be very beneficial to your organization, depending on how you redirect or how you direct the change to your advantage and to your favor. But one of the things that you must do is that you must manage and handle change well, so that yourself and your employees can enjoy and can adapt to this new change project and can ease into it without any stress. I trust that you've learned so much today. Thank you for joining in, and thank you for listening in. For comments, for feedbacks, and for questions, you can visit us on www.thearmorgate.com. We'll love to talk with you. We'll love to listen to your questions, take your questions and answer you. We'll love to walk with you every step of the way. So don't hesitate to reach out to us. You can also connect with us on our social media platforms, on Facebook, on Instagram, and on LinkedIn. We would love to connect with you. Until I come your way, same time, same station next week. Keep being amazing and keep being productive. Bye for now.